Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unraveling the hidden machinery of human fear. I mean, have you ever wondered why your friend can just brush off an incredibly bumpy flight while you're instantly terrified by the absolute slightest bit of turbulence? Well, you're not alone. We're going to explore the biology, the history, and the psychology behind those wildly unique reactions. Picture this. Imagine two people standing in the exact same room, facing the exact same sound, or dealing with the exact same problem. The difference in how they react? It can be absolutely staggering. One person feels a small jolt, but they stay completely calm. Meanwhile, the other person's body completely shifts into survival mode. Their heart races, their hands shake, their thoughts scatter, and their breathing gets incredibly shallow. Suddenly, their whole world feels far more dangerous. So, why does that happen, even when nothing in their physical environment has actually changed? To really get this, we have to remember a core truth here. Fear is a survival system. It's not a flaw. Think of it like a slightly overzealous bodyguard. Long before modern civilization, fear was one of our oldest emotions. It was literally designed by evolution to warn our ancestors of danger way before that danger paid attention to them. It kept us from falling off cliffs or, walking right into fires. Without it, we'd take some pretty reckless risks. So fear is actually meant to be helpful. It's there to warn us, not to paralyze us. But that still begs the question. Why does the intensity vary so much from person to person? Let's start peeling the onion with layer 1, the hardware, biology and genetics. So, what's actually going on inside our biological hardware? Well, it starts with the amygdala. This is the part of the brain heavily associated with processing threats and sounding the emotional alarm. Now, if someone is born with a highly reactive amygdala, their internal alarm system is tuned to a much, much lower threshold. That highly reactive amygdala is going to quickly flood their body with stress hormones, things like adrenaline and cortisol. And that creates an intense, immediate feeling that a massive emergency is happening right now, even if the actual danger is super small. And we see this biological hardware play out dramatically in everyday life. When the amygdala is highly reactive, the physical response is intense. The heart beats harder, muscles tense up, and attention drastically narrows as the brain scans for an escape route. Honestly, it's exhausting if it's constantly triggered by just ordinary everyday life. Now, compare that to someone with a calmer temperament. They're less easily activated and might actually feel energized by a challenge. It brilliantly illustrates how two people can experience the exact same event, but that sensitive internal wiring sends a much stronger, totally exhausting danger signal in just one of them. Which brings us to layer 2, the software. Environment, childhood, and trauma. If biology is our hardware, then our software gets programmed early on. A stable, loving environment teaches the child's brain that the world is safe enough to explore. If a kid is comforted when they're scared, their nervous system learns that fear can be resolved. But on the flip side, a chaotic environment, one filled with conflict, trauma, or neglect, teaches the developing brain that danger can just appear suddenly, without any warning. It learns that fear has to be carried without help, which makes that internal alarm system so much harder to quiet down later in life. This brings us to a really crucial realization. There's a saying, the current event is only the doorway, the past is the room behind it. Adults who seem to just overreact to small triggers are so often responding to the echoes of their past, not just the present moment. A tiny bit of uncertainty today can awaken a massive memory of helplessness from years ago. That is exactly why fear can sometimes feel so much bigger than the situation itself. And hey, it's also vital to understand the role of our current capacity. Exhaustion dramatically amplifies fear. Even a naturally resilient and calm mind can become highly fearful when overloaded by chronic stress, burnout, or just plain sleep deprivation. Why? Because a tired nervous system loses its flexibility. When your body is tired, your brain literally has less capacity to regulate emotion. Suddenly, small problems feel like massive threats. So sometimes heightened fear isn't about personality at all. It's simply a massive red flag that your system is completely overloaded. Peeling back the third layer, we look at the network, culture, society, and uncertainty. Depending on the culture you were raised in, your expression of fear is shaped powerfully by societal expectations. Some cultures offer extreme praise for toughness. They treat fear like a weakness or something shameful that needs to be hidden away. A person raised there might feel intense fear on the inside, but mask it completely. On the other hand, a culture that normalizes anxiety and values caution might lead people to express their fears super openly. We don't experience fear in a vacuum, It's always filtered through the values and stories our culture tells us. Our social network also has some very specific triggers. First up, is uncertainty. The brain desperately wants control. It hates open loops, kind of like a bad TV cliffhanger, and it will quickly create worst-case scenarios just to prepare itself. Second is social exclusion. We're social creatures, so the threat of social rejection, judgment, or embarrassment can trigger survival instincts just as intensely as a physical threat. And finally, learned observation. We actually absorb the anxious tone of the adults around us while we're growing up. Fear can literally be passed down through habits and emotional modeling. Crazy, right? Finally, we reach the core, reshaping the system. Here is the core truth of this explainer. Fear is not fixed forever. The human brain is highly plastic and totally adaptable, but before we can reshape it, we have to recognize how it hides. You see, fear wears a lot of different masks. Some become perfectionists because perfection feels safer than failure. Some become incredibly control-oriented because that feels safer than uncertainty. Others turn into people pleasers to avoid conflict, or quiet observers to avoid exposure. This means that the person in your life who seems incredibly bold and controlling, they might actually be driven by a deep, hidden need to just feel safe. Realizing this requires a massive mindset shift. When fear acts as a boss, it shrinks your life, commands you to retreat, and tells you to hide. But when we learn to interpret our emotions differently, fear stops being a prison dictating our actions, and it transforms into a helpful guide. Think of fear as a messenger. It simply provides information, telling you where you're vulnerable, where you need to exercise some caution, or where you have room for growth. So how do we make that transition? Well, it comes down to 3 distinct steps. Step 1 is safe exposure, which basically means gradually facing the trigger. Step 2 is getting support and therapy to build self-awareness and healthy coping mechanisms. And step 3 is repeated experience. By following these steps, repeated safe experiences slowly retrain your nervous system. You're essentially proving to your brain that a situation is no longer as dangerous as it once felt. And I really want you to remember this. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's the ability to act while fear is still present. Many people who look absolutely fearless from the outside are actually terrified. They've just trained themselves through practice and purpose to keep moving forward anyway. Being fearful does not reduce your worth. True bravery is letting fear exist, but choosing your next move with wisdom anyway. As we wrap up this explainer, we've seen that every emotion we feel has an incredibly complex story behind it, rooted in our biology, our childhoods, our cultures, and our daily stress levels. Which leaves us with one final, pretty profound question to consider today. Is fear mostly something we're born with, something life teaches us, or something we learn to outgrow one choice at a time? I'll let you think about that as you reflect on your own experiences. Thanks for joining me, and keep asking those deep questions.